All right, happy Friday. I should be live. We're going to keep changing things till these win, so I got glasses on. If you're new here, quick way to start is go watch the intro of the first video on this channel. Is like 10, 15 minutes long to get a sense. Since people are stubborn, really quick, I'm trying to win right now. I'm trying to win right now against a painted Friday number in football. If you wanted, it would not be too much of a struggle to get low to like maybe mid six figures on these games right now. I won 10 units on these last year. This is no small claim. You can do the math on what that'd be worth. Obviously, you cannot just sit here, watch a couple hours of games in your underwear on the weekend, and then come around and, if you win 10 units right now on Friday, that's, millions of dollars in value. Like, let's call it roughly 2 to 5 million, depending on what outs you have. That said, my track record suggests that works. I'll get into results right. How do I screen share? That this is still something that's an edge, but look, obviously I'm very impressed with the quality of the market so far. Efficiency of the market, maybe is a better word. But yeah, like I do not have tomorrow's newspaper. This is not going to be easy candy from a baby. If it was, other people would do it. If other people did it, other people would have the outcome. If other people had that outcome, it wouldn't really be an outcome worth having. So, yeah, you can try running through, like these are an example of the results from last year, like how it would look if you bet 113 games at a 56% win rate, what your drawdowns and probability of even winning at all over a couple hundred games would be. This is not some crazy rigged Russian ping pong edge. Anyways, here's the games from last week. As you can see, we've bet 9 games, 2 half bets, 7 full bets. The 7 full bets are 2 and 5. Obviously, results-wise, utterly fucking atrocious. To do this, 24 to 36 hours before a game, it's going to be hard to make these numbers like really that positive, columns S and T, but we've done that so far. The market thinks we should be a minuscule winner. What's the quality of the work been? I mean, obviously I watch these games, like, you can basically grade Buffalo a loser 5 minutes into the game. It doesn't feel like remotely the right side, but if you look how Buffalo and Kent are being priced this week, I'm not sure it's like wasn't that bad and obviously closed phenomenal. I'll go into that a little because it's a little interesting on just like what state of the market in 2025 I'm kind of seeing. Again, it's Friday, and anybody who's had an opinion worth betting 6 figures on has done so by now. Basically, what you're left to bet on Friday is games where the number's really good, but the handicap is shit. And of course, everything ultimately distills to a number. But I guess what I mean by that is like, if I pull up, what's an example of that? I guess kind of like Florida. I mean, like numbers wise, this game would have been 3-ish 2 weeks ago, maybe even 2.5. So, numbers wise, it's a great number on Florida. Handicap wise, it's complete and utter dog shit. We're finding out now Lagway's been having the whole offseason through a shoulder and upper body injury, didn't really practice much and is getting into form. They claim right now he's fully healthy, but this information started to come out. Handicap wise, it's hard to like expect Florida, to be super into the season right now with what happened last week. And, it's a pretty dog shit like handicap, frankly, to want to go and bet the Gators right now. There's plenty of examples on the opposite. Like, frankly, this game exactly like, Miami, Florida makes all the sense in the world. Florida be on the verge of starting to lay down here. But how on earth would you lay a price this bad? And so like most of these games are going to have reasons to not love it. Obviously, if there weren't, they would have moved by now. And so like, I'm not like this complete spreadsheet virgin, math only, zero handicap. And if anything, I feel like I'm even more on the other side of the spectrum. But like, believe me, I'm fully aware that this 10:30 p.m. start time for Boston College, off an overtime loss, to go play in an empty stadium, like it's not the easiest game to expect a bunch of teenagers to come with juice. And, I get all of that. It's clearly was never like Boston College's game. And I just thought the number was good enough. Was this bad? I don't know. I mean, it closed good enough to win like a peanut. I mean, And they're up 17-6 with like 2.5 minutes in the first half. I'm sure the live line must have been around 20 or more, and anybody who bet Stanford would have, cut their arm off to cancel the bet at that point. They fumble the snap going in 1st and 10 in the red zone. Stanford scores on the next play through like not a good pass at all, just like a really sloppy defensive play. Then they throw a pick 6 on the next drive. They're losing, and the whole bet. It's not even so much that like Stanford's rated so much lower than the market. Obviously, I'm low on Stanford, but it's how they can't play left-handed. Like they just cannot play in obvious passing downs, and that flipping the script, as you can see, like I think they're not going to be favored in a single game this year. Maybe against San Jose, it'll be around pick, but if they were favored in a game, like they are physical enough in the trenches to, if they can be in unpredictable down distances and like play normal football, they can like run the ball a little and stop the run a little, but they just have no hope when trailing, as we saw in the BYU game. And honestly, I just think the game funnels completely the opposite direction if that doesn't happen. So would I rebet that? Yeah, I don't want to be in the habit of like doubling down when I lay 13.5 on the road and the team loses by double digits and it didn't close that good to say, no, I was definitely right. But I'm not really changing the team's ratings, and you can see like the market's not either. So it's a long-winded way for me to say like the games I see winning, especially in like past years too, honestly aren't the games I've kind of been betting so far this year, which are like numbers I think are fractionally off due to like team quality and like a little bit of matchup stuff. What's been more winning is like honestly like the 1990s handicapper stuff of like all in spots in some of these like monster home field SEC games and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not really, look, I've been winning for enough years in a row now. I'm not going to like 180 my process. Clearly I'm impressed. I've only seen like about 7 games worth full betting so far this year. And the results on those 7 have been really poor. Obviously I'm quite impressed with how this market's been, but I definitely don't all of a sudden think like football betting is dead and this can't happen. Do I think we've like net run a little poorly and like that could have flipped if that snap doesn't get fumbled easily? Same thing with this choke job, like, who knows? But I'm not like throwing in the towel. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. And, it's 7 bets. So do whatever you want. I'm completely basically unshaken, but yeah, I don't want to hide from the results. They've obviously been horrible. I can sit here and just repeat, I'm an idiot. I have no idea what I'm doing. These games suck and like apologize a bunch. I don't think that's helpful for me or anybody. I'm not going to do it. I can't change yesterday's newspaper. I badly wish I could. And I'm just going to try and make tomorrow's as good as it can be. So, yeah, that's that. I'm actually going to start with NFL this week. Again, I got to try something to switch up the vibes, find something that works. But opinions this week than in the past. And if nothing moves, I actually see a couple plays. So the first, to be clear, no play. I've seen like a lot of fake sharps want to start selling Indy. I don't really know why. I wouldn't be freaking out on either. It's 2 football games. Neither can mean too much, but it's pretty fair to say like the Miami game has only aged well. And Jones's like pedigree has always been there for the NFL. Like I wouldn't start freaking out. These people who love Tennessee this week, I think this is one of the worst coaches I've ever seen in my life. He's coached 17 games last year. So 19 games now. He's covered 2 of them. If you got a good number in week 1 this year, which you had 3 months to lay 7.5 and 7 with Denver. So I'm not counting that as a cover. And one of those 2 covers was against the Dolphins when Snoop Huntley signed with them like 3 days before the game. So he basically has 1 good game in these entire 2 years of being a coach against a really broken dog shit Houston team that basically had won the division already in December last year and clearly didn't show up for the game. And like, they're not like close to being the right side in these other games. Like even last week, like they come out and play well in the first half and then just completely botch it. So yeah, I don't see really any world or reason to want to start pricing Tennessee better than a -6. And frankly, I feel like I'm being kind to them to make them that good, especially I just saw Latham before this call get ruled out. And I don't know why you want to start dragging Indy below 0. Like for me, the price is pretty close to good. And on handicap, I kind of lean Indy. Like, we just saw Tennessee, Denver closed around 8-ish in week 1. It landed, kind of looked like it should be 8. We just saw Indy, Denver in Indy close pick-ish, kind of looked like it should be pick, kind of landed around pick. I mean, if you want to call Denver like something like 1 or 2 over Indy right now on a neutral, we don't have much evidence other than, tens of millions of dollars that everybody just said that's what it should be, and the game playing out to suggest that's definitely correct. So, and we just saw 2 weeks ago, Denver 6-ish over Tennessee on a neutral with tens of millions of dollars supporting that price, and, the game itself playing out that way. So if you want to call Indy 4 to 6-ish, depending on how you like them, over Tennessee on a neutral with divisional road not meant a huge penalty, and now some Tennessee injuries where it sounds like Latu and Ward are both playing for Indy. I just think it's like the perfect number. And I totally get, like, you're going to see all the trends this week of like the ugly 0-2 dogs in week 3 in NFL and all these like systems that people have. And I just price the game on how good the teams are and try and model the reality of the probability of each one winning. I just think this price is pretty close to perfect. Same thing here, honestly. Like, I don't see much. Everyone who knows football more than me thinks this guy Hunt, the guard for Carolina, who's out for the year, matters a ton. But I don't know on what planet you want to start lifting Atlanta that much above a 0, maybe plus a half. And if you hate Carolina, they're going to be like a -7 or something. You're not stealing with anything here. It's not like you could confidently make this more than 6. Maybe you could make it 6 and convince yourself, like, against the pinnacle number, you have some like micro edge, but I don't really see the point. So I'm not betting this current price. But it's gone pretty cheap to me. I mean, Vegas, I guess I've leaned against them both games, so maybe I'm low on them, but I don't know what they've done to really deserve being priced much above like a -2 right now. I don't know how many worlds they would have ever covered last week, and now they're on 5 days rest. Washington's on close to like 9 days rest in a big spot here and it's a 10 a.m. body clock game. Like, I mean, there's easily real home here worth something. And Washington, with what they just closed against the Giants and what they just closed last week against clearly like a machine-like Packers team right now, like the market was pretty close to calling Washington like half a point or 1 point worse than Green Bay, which might have been light, but that is where it closed. So like the market's been holding Washington around a +3 with healthy Daniels, meaning the game's like upwards of 5 with like probably above average home here to get us like not to 7, but probably 6.5 juice. So what's Daniels worth? I mean, I think Mariota's as good of a backup as there is in the NFL right now. And like, frankly, head to head with Geno, don't really see a huge difference. Three feels more correct to me than 3.5, which is kind of what I think the market is pricing him as being worth here. And to me, this move this morning on the confirmation that he's out was kind of pricing in what everybody was paying attention all week already knew, which was like there's probably a fraction of a percent of a chance that he would play this week, Daniels. So yeah, I mean, these cheap threes would be kind of like my first real lean of any of these, but still not anything worth playing. Again, I do have a couple I think are. So Schwartz, obviously, with Cleveland's going to play more man coverage than anybody in the NFL. They have the roster to do it. I sort of wrote this game off just because it was going to take a lot to be interested in this price, but I probably should have spent more work dialing in on Zach Tom. The way Cleveland aligns on defense in the front is as wide or wider than everybody else in the NFL and really isolates one-on-one tackle versus end, like rush end matchups. And I think will matter a lot more than like something like with what Washington was doing last week when he was out. So honestly, like I said, I sort of wrote the game off early in the week. I got all these 60 to do and I'm still doing baseball. So I haven't followed up on that. It would be closer. It'd be worth closer to 1 point than 0, I think, in or out. What's Green Bay? I mean, off of results feels almost light. I mean, they've utterly kicked the shit out of 2 like pretty clear playoff teams, I think. How much of that was home? How much of that is game script? They do profile as being like a pretty good front runner in these games. So who knows? But I don't know how you could do anything but upgrade them so far. 4.5 feels right, and if anything, probably fractionally light. And I don't know what Cleveland's done. They're a weird team. It seems idiotic to say Cleveland was the right side last week. If you just look at the box score, you can make that argument. I'm kind of like wondering why all these people think Tommy Rees is this like head coach quality guy. I mean, I don't think they're doing a lot of well designed, intelligent stuff on offense right now. I'm expecting Conklin to play, but that left tackle can't really play in the NFL right now, and they have like pretty serious issues despite like what might be like a well above average defense, which I don't know what you think that makes their team rating could be. I mean, just going off last week, if you flipped home here, this is kind of like calling Green Bay roughly 1.5 or 2 worse than Baltimore, which feels good enough, but that would assume last week was efficient, which might not be the case. So I guess at 7 flat, I kind of think this is a plus 4.5 versus a negative 4.5 with no obvious matchup thing. Obviously, Green Bay faced a lot of man coverage against Detroit and handled it really well when they had to. Their offense might even be getting unfairly penalized from that because they were just up so much at halftime. They didn't have to do anything in the second half. And really shredded the Detroit man coverage the entire first half when they needed to. So they've handled it, but I wouldn't even consider it if Tom wasn't playing. I think I said that right. Long story short, nothing. I'm extremely close to betting Cincinnati. I don't think it's quite enough. I think both people are way overrating both of these quarterbacks. Despite Browning coming back last week, there was a lot of like really bad issues in decision making. For me, just letting the NFL world tell me the value of Wentz. I mean, the guy 2 years ago on the Rams didn't sign until the week before Thanksgiving. So the entire NFL wanted him for nothing for like all of the offseason and 3 months of the entire regular season. Then played a completely meaningless game against San Francisco with backups at the end of that year. And then played a completely meaningless game against Denver with like a basically college team around him for the Chiefs last year. My big part of this is he was nowhere near Minnesota's plan for the season. Like they had Sam Howell, saw how disgustingly putrid he looked in the preseason. And Wentz has been on this team for 3 weeks. I mean, I think that's a big deal. Like 3 weeks, like Browning's been there 3 years. I think there's a huge difference in what they're going to be able to do with the playbooks. So as of right now, I guess I'll do injuries. It's Darisaw seems like barring a crazy setback, he seems way more probable than questionable, which would be a big deal because the backup seems like he's out. So they'd be on third stringer if I'm wrong there. What's he going to be like? I don't know. We haven't seen him play football in a year. I don't know what penalty to start him at. People were saying if it was like the Super Bowl, he could have played week 1. I don't know how true that is. That'd be a pretty big deal. The big one who's still out is Cashman. And even though Van Ginkel can play in the NFL, he's nowhere near like the instincts or movement skills of what Cashman is and how important. There's a really good video on YouTube this guy Brett Coleman made about the Flores defense and how important it is to have that guy in the middle because there's just one very obvious massive funnel to check downs in the middle of the field to running backs with how they design all these zone blitzes. And Cashman's like the best in the NFL at taking that away. I think that mattered last week. I think it is still going to matter. Harrison Smith, the safety, is supposed to be back. I don't think he's like this crazy NFL caliber athlete anymore, but in terms of like all the checks that he does quarterback in the defense, I do think that would be worth something right now, especially at home. So yeah, I mean, after seeing all this, I've completely pivoted what I thought of Minnesota, especially the Bears game last week as some context on what that week 1 game could mean. But it's been like completely abhorrently putrid, and I'm really low on Wentz. Like the whole NFL has told us like this guy's worth nothing on any roster in a while. We've seen Browning do stuff at least 2 years ago. Like I said, I think people are like overly optimistic on him. Just not that I care about what any of the media says, but in just speculating that this guy's had experience. He won some games and covered some games with them 2 years ago. I saw some like really, really, really bad decision-making last week and just like processing of the defense. And this is like a pretty hard stadium to play in right now against that defense. So That said, I still don't want to drag Cincinnati too much below like a -1.5 or 2. And that's pretty close to where I'd have Minnesota right now too, with the state of things. Honestly, I do think Addison and Jones being out on offense matters. Like there's not a lot of guys you really want with the ball in the hands. Mason can run, but he's like nothing in the passing game. And so in terms of what they're going to throw to, it's this tight end Hawkinson who looks like he can't move at all anymore. Jefferson, and then maybe this like kind of underrated receiver Naylor, but Thielen looks like complete dust to me too. So there's just like, I know O'Connell's understood as this like guru magician who won games with Josh Dobbs, and like people bring up Nick Mullins and stuff. But if you really look into the games and the results of the games, and like, what was the name of the BYU kid who started 2 years ago? Jaron Hall, I think. Like, there's been some really ugly shit when shit got bad with Dobbs too and Mullins. And I think Wentz is that bad. So definitely like these flat threes. I think Cincinnati's solid there, but it's nowhere near painted enough to have a bet. I won't waste time. I think it's fairly perfect. I mean, maybe we're like fractionally getting into the interesting range on Philly, but it's nothing really worth going over. I will say, just for like all these matchup people who love like profiling these teams, like man zone, whatever, like this is just a great example of like, there's so few coaches who just do the same thing every time. And if they do, they get fired pretty quickly because it's pretty easy what to do. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but the entire Super Bowl, Philly KC in this February, it might have been literally 0 blitzes. If not, it was 1 or 2, but almost rushed with 4 or less the entire game and almost played zone the entire game for Philly. And obviously it worked flawlessly. And despite that, they basically completely 180 the defensive game plan last week. We're spamming man, which we'll get to them here with this game in a bit, but I'm not sure that's not the way to play this team right now for the first time in like 6 years. And blitzed a ton. So, you know, because I think that's the way to play Kansas City right now. So I just, again, for like all these people who obsess on like predicting coaching game plans and matchups, like stuff changes. And I really think the market sometimes under focuses on just like team quality, which sounds really dumb and stupid, but I do. Super bearish, both teams. These Pittsburgh injuries are starting to matter a lot. Obviously, like $12.7 gazillion got bet on Pittsburgh on game day last week. I massively respect the people who did this and am quite certain that they will win in the long run, but I didn't get that one for 1 second. I don't know. Like, I don't know if they know something. I left it alone. I didn't bet Seattle. If I inject myself with truth serum on these games where we are head to head or disagree, if my ROI on all my games over a huge sample is going to be whatever, 5-6% ROI, probably there's 2 subsets of games. One is those games I'm against those people where I'm probably pretty damn close to flipping a coin. And yeah, if I went head to head on a game like Pittsburgh, Seattle, maybe half the time I'd be right, half the time I'd be wrong, but you do that 1,000 times, you're getting completely buried. I mean, that's as bad as you can do. 500 is negative 50 units. So, yeah, if that's going to be my ROI, it's probably 2 buckets. Those where I agree with everybody who influences the market heavily like that, where probably my ROI is closer to 10 or 12. And those where I don't, or I'm oppo, and the ROI is probably closer to 0, if not -2 or -3. So until further notice, I'm going to like be careful fading Pittsburgh because I don't want to just like completely buck that. Maybe there's something they know I don't. Maybe there's some novel mathematical part of football I'm misunderstanding. But I don't really have a clue what aspect of this team could be close to even being average, let alone above average. And so I'd be, with the state of the injuries right now, wanting to make them like a -2, which is not. I wouldn't be making New England a ton lower than that. I'd more be making this price on a neutral. So why am I not betting New England? I hate both teams, to be honest. And there's enough weird stuff with both these coordinators where I'm going to bow down to the market and say there's some like ball knowledge matchup stuff I'm missing. If I've seen plenty of people speculate that the Fields thing could be worth nothing. I kind of wanted to believe that Taylor would be worth nothing as a downgrade, and maybe some people even suggest there's an upgrade. I don't really believe that. Like I just let like these teams have the information way beyond anything we would ever have on what they should be doing. Maybe, and of course the Jets would be in the lower quartile of teams on trusting doing the right thing, but you know, it'd be pretty shocking to me if like a bunch of idiotic 7-year-olds are running the football team. I'm guessing they had reason to believe Fields gave them the best chance to win if that's what they started with. And yeah, I'm sure the drop off small. I'd just be very careful assuming this is an upgrade. Even at this late number, if you did believe it's an upgrade, I think New York's good here. I don't really believe that. And as long as it's like a half-point downgrade at this current price, I have to leave it alone. These O-line things for Tampa, I think are like really, really big, like really, really bad, especially the tackles. I'm not freaking out on this guard who's out for the year. And then I saw Egbuka showed up in practice today. I guess I would bet on him being more probable than not. He clearly was dealing with this hip thing in the game, like he was getting wrapped up and stuff on the sideline. Maybe that worsened throughout the week. I don't have great information inside there, but yeah, I mean, without the tackles, it's hard to make Tampa a ton better than a 0. You know, maybe a little bit better. And I'm really low on Houston, but they did close a dog and didn't have to win that game. It took like a pretty crazy comeback at the end. And pricing the defense, it's out there, but it sounds like I didn't really get it, but it sounds like they intentionally gave up that Chubb touchdown. And all these kind of like non-denial press conferences this week, they kind of like skirt around questions around that. If you want to try and contextualize how you're pricing the team, if the way you're pricing these games comes down to like one play like that, swinging your power rating on a team, you're probably doing this wrong, but just something to be aware of. I'm not doing anything. I promise games are coming. Very close to betting under here. I sort of think 43 is better than 43.5. But I'm quite confident both are better than 44. If I'm wrong and it's 43.5, the risk reward isn't there at all to be betting minus 110. But like, is there, I don't know how much, if that 365 number is real, but like, I would think 44.5 under minus 110 would be kind of solid at that bet 365 number. There's a real world where Houston's like picking top 5 in the draft next year. Like I don't really think, I really think that just raw personnel of the offensive line is that bad and is that unfixable. It seems like the center has been back practicing this week. We see Andrews. He hasn't really been like the issue to me. It's kind of everybody else, and the backup there wasn't that horrendous. I think Christian Kirk will help a little. They just have very, 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 very few people getting open. If you do take away that Chubb touchdown, he starts to look like a lot more dusty, given Tampa gave it up on purpose. And there's just really not a lot of people on the team you want to have the ball in their hands other than Collins, who isn't, I don't think there's 4 or 5 better receivers on the planet than him. I'm not saying anything against him, but if that's all you have to scheme against, and again, I'm still learning how this Jacksonville defensive coordinator works. He just has almost no experience as a legit defensive coordinator at any level. So I don't know if he's one of these people who's going to try and bracket him or what they're going to do with him. But I don't think either has an awesome chance at blocking the other. This guy Walker on Jacksonville has to be one of the most underrated number 1 picks ever. I mean, he's like dominating games right now and was the number 1 pick. I don't know why no one talks about him. Side looks perfect. All right, here's my first bet. I'm going to track this. Right now, 3 is worth around like 23, 24, 25 cents, depending on who you ask. So like Pinnacle will be minus 112. Down line would be minus 120. Circus 115. Here's like 123. Obviously, there's like some minus 110. I'm going to track this as a full bet on Chargers minus 2.5, minus 120. I think that's a very fair price. It's NFL. If you don't think that's fair, I don't know. Fuck you and don't watch. It's NFL. If you can't bet 2.5 minus 120 on NFL on Friday right now on this game, you need more outs and you shouldn't be betting this anyways. There's lots of 2.5 flat and 2.5 15. And, like I just said, Pinnacle's taking 20 grand at 2.5 minus 112. If that's not fair enough, I don't know what to say. If you only looked on games this year, not that like DVOA matters a lot in 2025, but like just as one example of like a public proxy of efficiency, they'd be the 2nd or 3rd best team in football, the Chargers. And I don't know how you couldn't be like pretty massively impressed by both of these games. how much is that worth depends on what you start them at. But for me, Harbaugh now has coached 20 games with this team. They've covered in 15 of them. Of the 5 they haven't covered, one was an abysmally horrible matchup against his brother last year, I think on short rest, but definitely with some bad injuries. One was a Taylor Heineke game against Pittsburgh where Bosa, Slater, and Herbert all got hurt. Again, you can do this with a lot of teams, but like that's a little above the line of just like a normal nick and injury where like you say injuries happen to everybody. That's your whole fucking team and all your best players. One was a similar injury game where they were the right side anyways against Arizona. And so there's really 2 bad games that the Chargers have played for Harbaugh right now. And it's the playoff game and then the Tampa home game last year. Everything else, they've not like covered. They've been like easily and obviously the right side. And I just think people are sleeping on a little bit like Detroit when they just cover every fucking game they play for 3 years. The same thing happened with Harbaugh in the NFL the first time in San Francisco. He cut this, but it got really ugly at the end. But like the first 3 years, San Francisco was covering like way above anything Belichick ever was with the Patriots. I mean, they were covering like 67, like high 60% every first 3 years with Harbaugh in San Francisco. Like, I just think this guy is a machine at getting teams ready. And even if he's not, that's not really the reason I'm betting it. How could you watch these games? Like how could anybody watch this Chargers game last week and think that shouldn't be 4 or more if it's played again? Like, I get there was an end zone pick, but like the Chargers settled for plenty and left a lot of points on the board in the second half. Like, I would not at all say that like ran good for the Chargers in this complete dominating fashion. They've given up the least points in the NFL ever since this guy. I think this is easily the most underrated defensive coordinator in football. I don't think I'm elevating that crazy where we see 20 games with this regime. 15 have been phenomenal to start calling this team like at least a +3 and probably like a 3.5. Like, it's just pretty easily the most underrated defense in football. I think this guy Staley should be paying like reparations to football fans the next decade, like with what he did with Derwin James. I mean, I can't believe the way he used this guy, but like James is back to looking like 2018, like one of the best defensive players in the sport with what they're allowing him to do right now. Hart can get got as a corner, but still, and Dante Jackson might be the most underrated corner tandem in the NFL right now. Like, they're playing phenomenal. Henley's probably the most underrated linebacker. I don't really know what evidence this team has given the last 2 years to think they're not like a +3, which is clearly not how the market's pricing them, at least in this game, because I don't know why you want to start dragging Denver up that much above a 0 with what they just were against Indy and really all these games. And really any time they've played any above power rating 0 team in this regime with Knicks and Peyton. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets shoved in my face. It's Friday NFL. I expect it to come back some, but if Denver's a 0 and Chargers are at least a 3, I know it's short rest. I know they just had 3 all in like fastball, big divisional efforts. That's probably a little more than what's Denver's given. But it's the NFL. Like, these aren't like college kids who have to like sleep through UMass. Like, they're playing the Broncos in a divisional game. Like, why would they not show up? I wouldn't be pricing in much of that. I don't think Mac is worth heaps as good as he is with the way they schematically do defense. So yeah, I'm fully expecting Surtain to play, but he clearly was hampered with an ankle last week. And we know offense is more predictive than defense. And most of what Denver's power rating was these first 2 weeks was dragged up by last year's defensive effort, which translates year to year a lot less than what the Chargers are doing. So I basically don't see this price as really giving the Chargers much credit for these first 2 games, which seems very wrong to me. I'm sure they'll lose by 10, but I like that game. So I think Seattle's like probably at least a 0. I don't know why this isn't on here. You guys have been really good with these spot odds, but Julian Love has been, I guess, a little mediocre this year, but he was pretty easily the best player on Seattle's football team last year and hasn't practiced this week and doesn't seem likely. I don't know if I call him doubtful, but Julian Love needs to at least be on this list and probably is questionable at best, which would matter and swing things. They play on, we'll get to it, but they play this on Thursday next week, a divisional game. I don't know enough yet about McDonald, about how he'd manage these, with these injuries, with the players playing through this when they have this game coming up. And, they're laying 7 juice, 7.5 here. And then within the game, how he'll manage this game with a game like this coming up, which would matter and is too important to pricing this. And I'm too unconvicted on how that's going to play to bet anything. I sort of think New Orleans, has been pretty impressive in these. I definitely think they're the right side against Arizona. Penning would matter a lot. It sounds like things are coming along a little. Is he on here? Yeah, questionable. It's turf toe as well. Obviously nothing like what Burrow had. But they're getting extremely thin there and will be down to like an undrafted free agent if he's out. I don't know how much you want to drag them down a lot below like a -5 though, because they're I think clearly not on this like current state of Carolina. Even one of like you know, I don't think they're worse than the Giants right now. So if that's what they are, the price is like probably pretty perfect. But if Love's out and based on what the total is and how this might be coached and managed, I actually would start to get at 7.5 leaning dog. I don't know what the best number is. South Point says they have 7.5 flat. I don't know if that's there, but definitely New Orleans, nothing strong. I haven't bet it. I'm not going to. I'm extremely close to betting Dallas. Chicago now has played 17 games, 19 games now with Caleb. I think they've won 5. Several of them were against some of the worst football teams I've ever seen in my life, including Tennessee last year and Carolina early last year. Anything against a remotely average football team since has been like completely pathetic from this team, like completely. Normally, I would not be freaking out making 2 cornerbacks be worth a point each for a combined cluster value of like 2 points. That seems utterly deranged to me when you say it out loud. But given Dennis Allen is going to run man coverage as much as anybody else in the NFL, almost arrogantly so, where you're going to be isolating this corner talent, especially against a team like Dallas, with these 2 backups who cannot remotely play at all. Like, by the way, Kyler Gordon's like clearly week to week with a pretty severe hamstring. Like, I would call him massively down. If you gave me -110 on Kyler Gordon playing this week, I'd make a massive bet on no. Against Dallas, who all this guy has ever done is shred that. Like, if you go back to when Wink Martindale was on the Giants, like even last week, like he's like the man coverage god, Prescott is, with all of this stuff. Last year, Dennis Allen doubled CeeDee Lamb the entire game when he was with New Orleans. I'd be careful expecting a lot of the production coming from that. But yeah, I mean, I'm down to like, I mean, if you price Chicago as like a 400 team, which I mean, all the evidence in the world is they're significantly worse than that. The non-evidence side is this guy who's never head coached a football team in his life with a very below average defensive coordinator with the worst corner tandem in the league who's going to be with that defensive coordinator spamming like cover 1 the entire game with corners who can't cover against a team with really good receivers. I get Dallas's O-line is very broken, and like I'm not sure Dallas is much better than average team, if at all, and they could easily be like a 475 team. But if they are, then this game with normal home field is like the game should be like Dallas and $1.18, which would mean I guess it moved a little, but I saw it more like in the lower range of this. Increase. You get 2-cent at Pinnacle, that's true. But like, you know, if Dallas is a 500 team, which they might be, and I think their defense is getting a little bit dragged through. I mean, yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to make this game in the 130s for Dallas at all. And matchups wise, like I think some of the slight improvement from Caleb last week was all about Detroit spamming man. He had coverage in that same game last year on Thanksgiving in that dome. I think he's way better, all the way back with Lincoln Riley, way better against defenses like that. And in these, like, if you don't know, Eberflus is going to run way more zone coverage than anybody else in the NFL in this game. I think Caleb struggles with that way, way more. I think their O-line is incredibly overrated, and this idea that they just sign and trade for and draft these names people that have heard of that's just going to magically become a good offensive line never made any sense to me. Now we're seeing results-wise, this is a well below average unit. I just if the game's going to play close to pick, what quarterback and offense and system and team do I want in the fourth quarter? It's like pretty clear to me. I am leaving it alone basically because of the uncertainty with Dallas's offensive line. and I guess secondary. But I think Dallas's defensive front is getting really underrated right now with all the points they just gave up. I think a lot of that was just Neighbors being a complete and utter freak show. And I pretty strongly lean Dallas, but it's not quite good enough for me to feel like we're like free rolled if I'm wrong about something. If a $1.15 was painted, I'd be pretty close. All right, I have a bet here, so I'm going to track this also at 2.5 minus 120. San Francisco, I think is worth a full 1 unit bet. So I mean, I'll make it really clear. I'm not like busting up any relationships here. I do not know with a capital K what's happening with Purdy. My best understanding right now today, before they practice, and maybe this even came out during the stream, is although I assume this would have moved more if it did, is there's an extremely legitimate chance Purdy plays this week. I mean, he's practiced 3 days in a row now. All the video, he looks like he's moving fine. Again, like I said last week, I don't think it means the world, but it's clearly worth something. For me, basically laying 2.5 minus 120. So San Francisco obviously had a complete year from hell last year, injuries and everything, but we do have like enough of a sample of what a like running good Shanahan team should be priced as. In that Super Bowl year, the year before, they're not my opinion, like in the market being power rated easily every game as something around at least a plus 6.5, probably being favored in the Super Bowl, probably something close to like a +7, maybe even better than that. And we know that's kind of what they are now. Obviously, completely different roster. They pay Purdy now. The defense does not have as many blue chip guys. The O-line is slightly worse. I get it. And no Debo. But, you know, this Seattle game that they completely controlled and were like way more the right side than the final suggested after last week with Seattle, to me is a lot more impressive. And last week, pretty easily being the right side, I thought. I mean, I'm not saying they're anywhere close to that 7, but let's just assume everyone's healthy, Purdy, Kittle, everybody, and then I'll take them off as we go through them. Right now, I being as Bayesian as possible, like kind of think San Francisco is like a +4.5, like kind of there with Green Bay, honestly. Like whatever, 1.5 below Philly or something like that. Now, I think Kittle's probably the most underrated player in the NFL and probably worth at least a point. And maybe a fraction more than that, and would be making them like around a 3.5 without him. Obviously, he's out. But I really don't think the quarterback is worth more than a point. I'm sorry. So like even with Mac Jones, I'm making this team pretty close to a 3. Maybe like if it's an average team on a neutral, it'd be like maybe 3 juice dog. But like I'd probably be closer to 3. And I don't really know what Arizona's done to be a lot better than an average team. I mean, other than clearly be worse than Carolina for half the game last week and like really got out to that lead due to like a pretty crazy defensive touchdown. So yeah, they fixed Will Johnson to be doubtful. He hasn't practiced at all this week. He's been like the best player on this team, if you haven't been paying attention, on Arizona's entire team, both sides. Arizona won both of these games last week, and this matters because a lot of people do stuff with Shanahan games in the division. The first game was completely insane, and the last game was against Josh Dobbs. If you go back 2 years ago, which was also against this young guy and Jonathan Gannon, and the reason I care about this is like San Francisco's flavor of offense is so unlike the rest of the NFL, and Arizona's flavor of defense is so much different from the rest of the NFL. San Francisco scored 35 and 45 points in both those games. And like, frankly, I really think San Francisco was close to the right side in that first home game last year against them. So I don't think there's any systemic thing with like matchups where Arizona has like some ownage or matchup advantage there on San Francisco. But back to like the number with Mac Jones, I'd be making this on a neutral, like a 2.5 versus 0. I get it's divisional home, which is worth less, but it is their home opener. I don't know why there wouldn't be like some real home here enough to make this like with Mac Jones, like 3 juice San Francisco for me. And so with Purdy, I think it's like 3.5 juice San Francisco and like maybe getting close to 4. And I think what's like, based on public stuff and a little of what I've heard, it's like, I don't think as of today they've actually decided or know. I'm sure by tonight they'll have like a pretty damn good idea. But I think we're like basically free rolled at that 2.5 minus 120 price, where if he's out, it'll probably come back there and we'll get negative CLV or 0 CLV. But I don't think we have a bad bet. And if he's in, the market's going to say we're going to have a phenomenal bet. I would probably be lower than the market would on how much it would move or matter for Jones versus Purdy. Just looking at how the New Orleans game last week, like New Orleans game last week, almost the market was saying that injury was worth like 2.5 points or something close to that. Like, I don't think that's right. And so if it moved that much, if he's in, I would disagree with. But yeah, I think it's a solid bet with Jones and like close to a great bet with Purdy. And those are two NFL games worth betting to me. So I don't really see the need to start tanking Kansas City as anything. Like, as I just went over with the Chargers, like there's a very real chance they just played 2 of the 5 best teams in the league. And weren't like obviously physically outclassed in any way. Worthy is probably pretty important right now. Like, as I just said, the way Philly covered them last week was for the first time basically since Mahomes' first year as a starter, which I think was 2018, intentionally running a lot of man coverage against this, which really has only worked in spurts with Houston because they have Stingley. But these weapons are so down right now, it makes sense to. I mean, it's a crazy reaction in 2 weeks. I get it because they were just 3 over the Chargers. But power ratings wise, it feels wrong to me to make them as like a clearly better team than the Chargers right now, who I just said are kind of like, to me, around a 3.5. That's kind of where I want to price Kansas City right now. In a regular season game where we're, I expect a huge effort there. It's a fucking NFL game, and they're 0-2 and play the Ravens next week. Like they need to win a fucking game. But I think 3.5 is like, I get we're probably down like 1.5 or 2 from 2 weeks ago, but it feels close to right with the state of things and what we've seen in the run game. So what do you drag New York to? Clearly wrong side against Washington, clearly right side last week. It's 2 football games. It doesn't mean a ton. We've got a decade of this entire franchise being horrible, basically. I don't really see any need to make them a lot worse than a -3.5. I mean, they have really good football players on basically every level of their team. I know after last week, some people are calling this defensive coordinator an idiot. I was plenty impressed with some of the stuff he did last year. I don't want to start like tanking this guy's image or rating for me. And so I kind of would be close to like 7 on a neutral, and with home be like thinking 5 or 5.5 is a better price for this game if it wasn't like probably a crazy fastball effort from Kansas City that we might not always get. And like maybe my 3.5 rating for them is pulling in too many like ideas and data points from games where we didn't get their fastball the last few years. So I don't see the point in betting it, but I do lean New York. And I guess under. But nothing worth betting. And then here, I think a big one, it seems like Marlon Humphrey's going to play. I think Isaiah likely could matter a lot with what Monken would like to call, especially against Detroit. Like easily where I'd be attacking Detroit is the middle of this defense. I think they would love to run a bunch of 12 personnel with really legitimate receiving threats at tight end. Not in every game. I wouldn't care a lot about likely, but against this game specifically, in a game that's meant to be competitive by the obvious price here, I would say maybe not a point, but like he could be worth like 5 cents or something. I don't want to make Baltimore right now a lot more than like a 6.5. Obviously, I talked about Detroit last week being in the range of like the Chargers and Chiefs right now, like a 3.5, 4. Maybe you upgrade them a little. I'd kind of rather tank Chicago. For me, it's just like kind of the opposite of the Chargers. Like this kid's played quarterback in 19 games now and been atrocious in all of them other than Will Levis last year and the Panthers back when their entire defense was out against Andy Dalton last year. like the Packers win last year. The Packers are resting a bunch of starters and didn't care about the game. So yeah, I'd probably be like more like 3.5 on a neutral here. with some real home, probably barely leaning Baltimore. And on matchups, frankly, leaning Baltimore as well. They kicked the living shit out of Detroit the last time they played. Just knowing how Detroit is, and I don't think they're incapable or incompetent of finding some way to combat that ball knowledge thing I must be missing there. Again, I glaze over a lot of that stuff. I won't with the college because there's some that matter this year. But yeah, I'm not doing anything. And sorry for taking an hour to talk about two bets, but I know people love the NFL and want to hear about it. So yeah, Chargers -2.5, -120, and San Francisco -2.5, -120, I think are good. For tonight, I don't think I would bet stolen money on either team right now. I want to really like the direction with this coach, but they're clearly not there yet. To be honest, I haven't even kicked the tires on what's happened with this quarterback. I don't think it's really worth more than a point and a half. I'm sure once it's announced an hour before the game, there might be like some movement, a point either way. I don't really play that game of trying to scalp 9.5 and 10.5. I don't think it matters a ton. I will say though, just for like gaining stuff, he did have a concussion last year. This is a shorter week by a day. It wouldn't shock me if they wanted to hold him out. I would probably lean more pessimistic without having any of the information itself on Francis playing for Tulsa, to be clear. Oklahoma State, I don't know if you saw, they brought in this kid who hasn't played football in 2 years and was like a regular student at Florida Atlantic last year, not playing sports, to come be the backup quarterback and like potentially get the job. So things are pretty dire with the quarterback situation. I don't know how low you want to start rating them. I mean, Tulsa pretty clearly is in the low to mid negative teens. 17-ish with the backup feels right. 16-ish with Francis feels right. So do you want to start calling Oklahoma State a -5 to support this price? Probably. I mean, that'd make them like pick with Wake Forest. I mean, this guy cannot play Flores, the quarterback. I don't know. I deplore both teams right as of right now. The Tulsa coach said, I think it's number 20, the running back, they're going to try and give the ball 20 times to this week. Everything about under would make sense if not for the pace and everything Tulsa plays at. So we're still learning exactly how ball control they want to be. They weren't really against Navy last week when they arguably should have been. Too much guessing with a new coach and horrendous quarterback play. Can probably guess strongly leading Iowa. These three of these matter a lot. I mean, the main one who like murdered us in the Miami, Ohio game is Ian Strong. That was the tall guy, number 9. Easily the best receiver on the team. The way what's his face Shiano was talking about him on Monday sounded extremely pessimistic. And they're getting really thin on the offensive line right now as well. Now, I will say, again, I've kind of conceded defeat on that. Kaliak-Manis has materially improved a lot. And as much as you want to start seeing Iowa completing some downward, like down the field forward passes last week, it was a complete mash unit from UMass. Still on ratings, I'm having Iowa probably around at least a 10. I mean, trench play wise, this is not shocking, but like close to as good as Iowa's been, as they are basically every year. And I don't know how I want to start making Rutgers with these injuries where Shiano's clearly freaking out about them as a lot better than a 5. So I'd be closer to like 5 on a neutral. I'm sure there's real home, but I'd be like a lot closer to 3 for the number. I'm not betting it. I'm not tracking it for anything. I've been wrong enough on Rutgers and Kaliak-Manis. I'm just going to bow down here. They're clearly not, one of the teams I've nailed. Not that I've nailed anything this year really, other than Coastal. But I do lean Iowa if you need action. So it seems like Army's just switching quarterbacks, so it's not really health related. And Dwayne Coleman is available, but has kind of lost the job to the guy who beat Kansas State. I don't know what to do with North Texas. I mean, we'll get to that game later. The Wazoo North Texas game, that was completely insane. I just know where North Texas has lived as a rating for like my entire career of doing this. And without some very obvious reason of like influx of spending 8-figure salary on a roster, why I need to start boosting them up to this price to be favored on the road at Army, which is like elevating their rating pretty close to like almost a 0, if not a 0. That said, I would need 3 to start thinking about Army, which there's no way we were getting. Kind of a game, a little bit like wherever Miami, Florida went here. Because this game probably 2 or 3 weeks ago is going to be TCU 2.5, maybe 3. But all of SMU's games are really bad. Like I think they played East Texas in the first game. That was like Jennings looked horrible. He made some really, really bad decisions. Last week against Missouri State's a really, really bad game from them. Not just because they didn't cover, but just the decisions Jennings is making right now is like really, really, really regress. I've seen it was a complete fake troll tweet, but I am going to be aware. There's speculation about Lashley talking to UCLA. And there's like a couple games where that could play a role. Almost all of the best live betting bets of my entire life have been related to teams folding and like quitting on a coach who's clearly leaving. I don't think that's what's happening. I just think SMU played 3 shitty games, but yeah, I mean, they're nowhere near a +10 for me right now. And TCU, if you want to make it like a 7 power rating versus a 12, that's sense, and that price would be perfect. Some people say there's no home. I don't think that's true. Obviously, the travel is nothing, but like a pretty huge stadium in a rivalry game. So, yeah, again, I'd be freaking out more about my work this year if I didn't like nail this Lala quarterback. The 2 NFL I liked last week, Detroit and San Francisco, easy right sides, I thought. I like the only thing I didn't, even like Coastal last week, like the only thing I really was like way off on that didn't bet last week was Florida Atlantic. So, I'm not like complete buffoon flipping coins here. This Lala quarterback cannot play in FBS. This is insane. He completed 1 pass. The team completed 2 passes last week, trailing the entire game, playing against prevent defense. I mean, this please go. There's not great footage of the McNeese game last week or 2 weeks ago. You're not going to be able to find that, but please go watch
limit increase
Lala Mizzou last week, and please go watch Lala Marshall in the Sun Belt title game last year. It's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. I'm dying and cannot wait to bet against this team against real Sun Belt teams. I haven't looked enough at their schedule. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be considering taking anything less than 3 with a team that just lost to Long Island. So it was just an easy game to leave alone. But EMU does have the better quarterback in the game. And, it's a weird game to go play on like steel turf when they have Sun Belt games coming up for Lala. Like, what should I make them? I mean, EMU is getting down around like Ball State. I know last week was a little there against Kentucky, but EMU is down around like, I mean, maybe they are a -20. And oh man. Because Lala played most of last year around a 0, so it just feels nuts to start calling them like a -15, but they probably are. That's how their games have played. And that's how bad this quarterback is. I mean, I don't know what else they can do. I mean, they should try playing Wildcat. I don't know. I'm not betting it because I don't know Temple well enough yet, but with this coach and like how he's going to manage these. But, we saw some with Sam Houston. I can guess and speculate. All I'm going to say is for Oklahoma, who, by the way, this defense on Oklahoma is like wildly organized. Like this is the best Venables defense he's had there. For an Oklahoma team to just be laying 24 on the road for Temple, for now Georgia Tech to be that same price as at home is like, there's not like crazy home field in these 24-point spreads. I mean, that's kind of saying like Oklahoma would only be like 3.5 or 4 over Georgia Tech on a neutral, unless the market downgraded Temple last week and upgrade Georgia Tech. But Oklahoma, I like Georgia Tech, but Oklahoma is like a lot closer to a 7 over Georgia Tech right now, I think. Like Oklahoma lays over Clemson, and Clemson was just 3 on the road. So, in a huge home field game. So, this is slashing Temple's rating / giving Georgia Tech a lot of credit against a Clemson team who I don't want to ruin any relationships. I'm not going to say anything too specific, but this is not speculation. My strong understanding is there is some not great things happening at Clemson right now is like the way I'll word it. I don't want to get too much more specific than that, but I'd be careful just like flying away with Georgia Tech's rating off that win. I think a lot of that was Clemson bad. That said, Georgia Tech's schedule is amazing. Like they could easily make the playoff, and the quarterback play is phenomenal. So I'm not betting it, but like I kind of think Georgia Tech's like still around a 10 and like maybe not even that. I mean, they weren't rated as that for any of their games so far. So I'm boosting them to the market if I make them that. And I know Temple got carried out last week, but the quarterback play is still really good. I mean, if you want to call them a negative 14, I'd get this price if Georgia Tech cared, but with the games in front of them coming off that win, it'd be more like lean dog here with what this game is to Georgia Tech, but it's guessing and speculation. I haven't cared enough about the UCF quarterback to be freaking out and find out about this. Maybe it's worth a point. I don't know. I know it's NCAA, but Jackson did play really well last week, or I think they had a bye week, so 2 weeks ago. Two really hard teams to price. Frost played as a player for Belichick on the Jets. I don't think that's worth anything, but in a weird scenario, I know they have a decent enough relationship. In a weird scenario where there's a blowout either way, I could see there being like a peaceful end to the game. Complete guessing. I don't think that's worth a ton. Just something to be aware of if you're watching. See, here's what I mean by like saying I'm not like, the market's not really saying I was that wrong with Miami, Ohio with some of these prices. Obviously, it's gone their way. A weird game for Las Vegas to go have to care about. And honestly, every Las Vegas game has aged poorly. I mean, they were in a war with Idaho State. Sam Houston means literally nothing in a game that probably had negative home field. And UCLA is like one of the most pathetic teams in the country. So yeah, I don't want to really be calling Miami, Ohio. I mean, there's some, if you like them, they're -5. If you don't, they're -10. I'm pretty stable and sturdy on that. Like you're going to have to like twist, like probably chop my arm off to get me to make them any number out of that range this year. So what's UNLV? That's what's hard to tell with their 3 points. I mean, after the Idaho State game, they're looking like a -10 if you're lucky, which would probably mean this game should be Pick or Miami favored. If you care about thrashing, maybe not even thrashing, but clearly playing a lot better against Sam Houston and UCLA, you could start elevating them to where they could be a -5 or better than that. But there's a lot of guessing with this whole roster now playing for the first time together. So weird game to play. Taking 3 made all the sense in the world, but there's nothing to even think about right now. Like I said, we won with BYU 2 weeks ago, and I downgraded them decently from that. This is easily the biggest game of this quarterback's life, Bachmeier. So yeah, look, ECU does a lot. ECU easily is going to have the better passing game in this game. I think the world of BYU's defensive coordinator. The whole week, this was only ever considering the dog, and when it moved earlier this week, I just kind of wrote it off. Like I said, I have all these games I'm doing baseball, so I haven't spent like an hour on this game. But BYU, I'm clearly rating in the single digits, I think. I mean, I don't think there's a lot they can do on offense right now, even if for them. He's not being on here. But Nakua, I forget if it's his brother or cousin, but the Rams guy's relative who was out against the first 2 games, Portland State and Stanford, is sounding probable for this week. Can ECU be a 0 yet? I don't know. Like, Coastal's completely abysmal. But they have played NC State pretty solidly in the second half, and we're coming up on now, like once they fired this coach last year, like every game under this coach, I think this coach might be pretty solid, and the quarterback certainly is. So, I mean, I don't think it's crazy to start, like if ECU played UTSA, would that really not be Pick? And if they were a dog, would I not bet them? I probably would. So, I mean, they could start getting up close to a 0, which means if you took 7, you probably have a good one, but it's gone. I talked about this game enough. I mean, ridiculous game to bet. I don't know. If you're inside and hear something, there could be a phenomenal bet, but I don't get anything from these 2. Good price. Yeah, like I said, I mean, Clemson's in a pretty bad spot right now. That said, all these relevant guys who are out last week, yeah, they're all fixed. So forget if it's the top 3. I mean, definitely Williams and one of those offensive linemen matter. I mean, I think you can start making Clemson. I don't know. I mean, if that Georgia Tech game got played again this week, like what would it really be? Would it really be like a lot lower than where it closed, which I think was like Georgia Tech 3? I mean, maybe it's 2.5. But like I think you can still make Clemson just on like the NFL quality of players all around. You can still make them like a plus 15. And Syracuse is probably a 0. So if you're not seeing anything in the handicap or matchups or like motivation or anything, it's a perfect price. I'm just kind of worried about like the season's over for Clemson. They're used to like a lot more than this and only cared about like a lot of people picked them to win the national championship this year. And there's a 0% chance of that happening now. So in the NFL, like that's usually a really good angle. You can try to do the math on pricing this. It's really hard to like historically label these like dream crusher games, but they seem to be worth something. I'd rather live bet it after you see it, but I'm not going to predict a flat spot until it comes. Like, what if they care now or are fighting to try and win the conference still? I don't know. So I've had Illinois as the better team for most of the year. And it's kind of one of these games where like I wish I understood better. Neither have played enough to like get really specific on the matchups and stuff. And I wish I could explain better why the price is what it is to consider betting Illinois. I know that sounds stupid, but again, anecdotally, I win way more on games where I can explain where my edge is coming from. And it's not just I randomly speculate that Illinois is better at football because of this computer model. I've liked Altmaier for a while. I don't dislike Mendoza, but I kind of trust him a little less in a game like this, to be honest, with taking care of the ball. I really dislike betting against this Indiana coach, but I'm really stretching things to start calling Indiana like 3.5 on a neutral over Illinois. Like I don't really know what Illinois has done wrong. I know they ran pretty good against Duke, but in a lot of ways they outplayed them too, and they had plenty of injuries in that game. I pretty strongly lean Illinois, but for me, like I just wish I could understand better where all the Indiana price is coming from. NC State's quarterback Bailey has played very, very well. I actually don't think Duke's played that poorly last year. That's another one. I can't believe I didn't bet Tulane last week. I don't really know why I didn't. I think they're both clearly positive. They're both clearly worse than 10. No shit. Thank you, Barry Horse. Give us a 10-point window on both of these teams' ratings. There's enough weird stuff with the way Duke plays defense that I don't have enough of a sample of how Bailey. I know they played last year, but I don't know how Bailey's going to like handle all the hyper aggressive Diaz stuff. I think it's currently getting like fractionally cheap at 2.5 would be more interesting, but I don't think anything is going to close good from here. It's probably going to close here. So Kent, obviously horrendous read from me last week. I should have done better with DeShields. That's his name, right? Drew DeShields versus Montez starting last week. They moved it way better in the second half of the Texas Tech game with him. And honestly, this was like easily the best quarterback play from Kent since Crum. Definitely better quarterback play than Schlee. So what do I start doing with them? I don't know. I mean, Florida State on their best day, as good as they've looked in some of these, are still in the teens. If you love them, they can be the high teens. I wouldn't judge you, but I think like mid-teens makes more sense around a 15. And I mean, to me, like clearly still the offensive tackle issue is massive, and they don't really have like dynamic playmakers in the MAC at all. But like the quarterback play is more than good enough, and he can move around, and he like does some stuff. And like in the front seven, not against Florida State at all, but in some of these MAC games, this is more legitimate of a defensive front seven than I gave them credit for going into the Buffalo game. I don't think you're an idiot if you think they're a negative 25, and like I might even think that myself. And if they are, I'm not betting them. But for the first time in like 3 years, I kind of lean Kent State in a game at this current price. Plenty of back and forth here. Western's weird. I think they're very well coached. I think the material ability of both quarterbacks is really low. And the offensive line, even by directional Michigan max standards, is really, really poor. But I do like the coach. And Toledo's the last coach in the world I'd trust in one of these games. So on roster, it's like close to a 0 against a low negative teens with basically no home field. That if all you looked at was the goodness of the football players, I'd be closer to 15 or 15 and a half. But I completely get the nature of this not really being Toledo's game. So there's nothing to do for me. I will have some below, don't worry. So if you missed, Troy's quarterback got hurt mid-game last week. Results-wise, obviously it heavily impacted the game. Kilcrease, the guy who came in, played plenty last year. He's not at all incompetent, and I don't think Crowder is this like crazy all Sun Belt type. So in game, it seemed like it mattered a lot more than what I would have guessed. But I'm sort of leaving this at like only like a 1 or 2 point thing. Troy's entire front seven is not anything close to like what it was with Sumrall, but they still have like really legit Sun Belt tacklers and people moving around like real athletes. But honestly, look, clearly we were way wrong on the game. Or I was way wrong on the Buffalo game last week. But I'm not sure I'm like way off on this roster or this coach. Like again, like it's Friday. Like we're gonna have to bet shitty spots or shitty numbers. Like if something right now is a great number with a great handicap, I'm not gonna be the only one in the world who can see these things. Like these just aren't gonna exist. And so like I get it. It with hindsight bias. I know traveling to Kent, you stay in like a hotel in Cleveland, an hour away from the game, to go play a noon game in front of no crowd. Like, did Buffalo look sleepy the whole first quarter with these ridiculous red zone turnovers and turnover on downs? And, when they actually turned it on, did they run away from Kent? And maybe if they came with 60 minutes of that effort, we laid 21 and a half. It closed, like Chris closed 24 and a half juice. Like, I think if the game closed 24 or whatever, like, maybe we had the right side there. Who knows? But I don't think I'm like way off on what this Buffalo team can be. I said in the thing last week, like this guy Snow is really like an amazing MAC quarterback, and this quarterback can run. And is definitely an upgrade over last year's guy, Upongya, or however you pronounce it.
Pitching change.
So I don't know. I have to downgrade Buffalo a little. I think Troy is barely in the negative teens. And Buffalo is probably around right now a negative 7.5. And I'd be pretty close to this price on neutral, but with the total and the weirdness of the matchups, and maybe Buffalo being worse at extending leads than I thought before last week, I get why Troy got bet today. But, they did completely collapse when this quarterback came in. And I know they moved at the end and failed on the concession, but so all the public stuff sounds like way more probable for Billy Edwards. I haven't cared that much. I don't think it's worth heaps. Obviously, they got destroyed last week, but like I don't think the quarterback had a ton to do with it. I've watched lots of Billy Edwards. I don't know. Is Loxley going to know all his strengths and weaknesses and know how to scheme against him? Is Edwards going to know all their signals and know what to tell the Wisconsin staff on what they do? I think all that stuff gets a lot overblown in games like these. I'm just going to price how good the teams are. And for me, I'd have, without handicapping, the price on the quality of the teams actually a lot closer. The issue is I basically never, ever, unless it's there's a number for everything, but unless it's egregious, I'm really, really not interested in these true freshman quarterbacks in their first ever legit road game in a stadium with whatever 100,000 people in it. Like, it's just not like I've seen way too many just like abysmal performances where you see football that you never saw from them before. I can't do anything. So the Coastal stuff, how much is on here? Yeah, so 2 of those offensive linemen are starting guards. Their number 1 and number 2 tight ends are out. They have 1 scholarship tight end on the roster right now, who they don't trust to run more than like 10 plays a game. So like they just have to run 10 personnel the entire game with 2 running quarterbacks with an air raid offensive coordinator. It's the weirdest shit show in football right now. I'm really confident this coach is going to be somewhere else next year. And that, like, at some point they're going to lay down and quit, but they have not done that yet. Like they really did show up for that ECU game. I know they lost. I think it was 38-0. Obviously that was a good halftime for us. You're going to think I'm nuts, but like, I know they just gave up 38 points. I don't really think the defense is that bad. I know the defensive coordinator is not, and the kids are not that bad. They just, when stuff, and you get turnovers on your own field and the game funnels away from you, like, you know, you get stuff like the Virginia game, like last week. But, you know, they didn't, again, I know it's some bullshit team, whatever it was, some like directional Carolina school, whoever they played the FCS team in the second game when they won 13-0. They had a shutout there, and like they were very competitive defensively in the first half against ECU, which is impressive. Like that's a real quarterback and team and receivers. But how bad can you make them? I mean, there's nothing to do, I don't think. To even start thinking about South Alabama, you need to either think they're like legitimate Sun Belt contenders this year, like borderline Sun Belt favorites, or start dragging Coastal to like Southern Miss last year, which feels so wrong. But like with this quarterback play and this like the system, I mean, everything I said at the start, I mean, they don't have a scholarship tight end. They can play, like they're forced into playing 10 personnel the entire game with an air raid offensive coordinator and two quarterbacks who can't throw. I can't do anything at this price. I don't think I can do anything here either. So Dilfer knows Golish really, really well. Golish, when he was at Tennessee, used to recruit Dilfer's high school in Tennessee a lot. And so we've seen them now play against USF with Golish twice against the same offense and how he does it. How is that going to translate to Tennessee caliber athletes? I would not even pretend to guess. To me, the only thing I could think about doing would be it's kind of priced in. Would probably be Tennessee team total over. I don't think it's amazing. On ratings, like they're very high teens. You could say they're bordering on 20. They almost certainly have upgraded quarterbacks this year. But UAB being in a war with Akron, and like, I mean, they're easily in the negative teens, probably mid to low negative teens. And this quarterback has improved a lot from last year at Kitna. And the offense is like doing good things. And like basically improving by the game. Yeah. I mean, this number plays up with Tennessee off a loss and the way Heupel cares about these. And he easily knows the number and has historically cared about it. I don't think it's quite the gap. Like we bet this game, we bet Tennessee against UTEP last year. I think we won 56-0. That was way more like, cause that was UTEP. Like they can name the score against UTEP. And it was UTEP's third string quarterback, but this is not UTEP's third string quarterback. Like this, they're scoring points. And it's not even so much that I think UAB is going to move enough to score touchdowns and points, but like just enough to get first downs, to hold the ball enough, to limit possessions enough to where if Tennessee only gets 11 non-garbage time possessions, you need touchdowns on 80% of them. Like too much weird stuff like a deflected pass or holding penalty or whatever in the second half is like just not worth it to me. So I know I started talking about this game 2 weeks ago. I would bet a lot that me talking about this call is not what's fucked us out of having a bet here. I think the market's just good. I mean, it's 2025. Like there's not a lot of secrets on what these coaches do and stuff. So same thing, kind of like with Tua last night. Like you can see, like good thing we didn't bet Buffalo. Like the whole world knows Tua can't play against real teams now. It's the cat's out the bag, and the whole world knows Heupel covers these games, and it's over 38. So maybe this paradise number you could lay, but it's not amazing. So Colorado State, despite their pace and despite Jay Norvell's like history with air raid and everything, they run a lot more heavy, like 12 personnel and tight ends and stuff than people would think or realize. This is a not easy game for UTSA to go travel to play. I've completely written off doing anything with it. I think UTSA, I'd still have negative. And Colorado State probably closer to -10. It's probably like a -2.5 versus like a -8. And it's probably like pretty close to 6 on neutral, and I think there'd be real home here. And I do decently lean Colorado State, but I don't see the point in betting it. There's a really weird weakness on weakness. Colorado State, for their power rating, has a really bad defensive line. UTSA, for their power rating, has a really bad offensive line. I can't speculate how that will go. I don't think there's anything to do. I'll skip over. I mean, if you miss it, just for the casuals, Caden Salter is going to be playing quarterback for Colorado. I don't think it changes anything really that much with total or side. Here's a huge game people are going to hear about. There's a shockingly simple of college football games. I looked into it this week of college football games where the local start time is still during Chick-fil-A breakfast. Very, very few. Like I think Utah is Costa Rica time, so this game's at 10 a.m. local. Power ratings wise, I have the teams like literally next to each other, like not just the conference, but out of the entire country. I think I'd have these teams right next to each other. So there's nothing to do there. This is probably the most underrated home field in football, especially the way Utah does things. If you don't know, Utah does a ton of pre-snap communications with their players on offense, and has mattered for a long time with getting into optimal shit with home road splits for them. I think that's priced in. So you're coming down to like the only way you could really bet this game is if you were some football savant with a matchup. And to me, it's just like there's a really obvious strength on strength with Texas Tech's pass rush against Utah's offensive line. Two good quarterbacks, two very different quarterbacks. If there is one matchup on the field, it probably is Texas Tech's receivers against Utah's secondary. Maybe if you're going to hold my gun to my head, like Barry, I just need to bet $100 on this game because it's such a cool game. At the current price, I guess you could get me to lean Texas Tech, but I don't think I've ever bet against Utah in that stadium in my life and don't really plan to. So
hedging changed
until, I mean, there's a price for everything. Maybe the market will start freaking it out and making it worth 7 points, but it hasn't yet. I don't know what to do with these games anymore. Like it seems like year over year in 2025, these teenagers don't give a flying fuck about these rivalries, and I don't really blame them. But like, it seems like this is way more of a thing when I first started doing this, and like when I was young and a college football fan. I've tried pricing the value of these things. I'm just going to stick to how good the teams are. I'm maintaining Oregon. It's going to make me be really hard for me to lift them above like a 25. I still. Maybe I'm stubborn. I'm going to need to see it next week with this quarterback against a real team because it's like, it's not that he was mediocre for UCLA. It's that he like couldn't function against any competent team with UCLA. Like it wasn't bad. It was horrible. So I understand he's looked so good this year, but to me, to start elevating him to have his skill level be as good as what we've seen, I need some other data point than what we've had. Like, obviously, if you want me to just sit here and analyze, everyone with a pulse with eyeballs can see they and he have been really good this year. But my job is to predict. And, you know, being grotesquely horrible and dysfunctional against competent teams at UCLA is going to help me predict until I see him not be that. I was going to give out Oklahoma on this. Somebody bet it yesterday. On ratings, it's not stealing. I think Oklahoma's defense is like organization-wise and how they function together and how they're all on the same page is like they're not close to this good just with the caliber of athlete, but like in terms of like synergy and 1 + 1 = 3 and everything working together, this Oklahoma defense is like on par with like the 2015, 2016, 2017 Alabama defenses. Like even like maybe again, totally different caliber of athlete. They're not as good. Let me be very clear, but like on par with like those back-to-back Georgia defenses that won 21 and 22, I think. And the quarterback play has been phenomenal. So I'm pretty confident of Oklahoma in the very high teens. I'm not against making them a plus 20. I mean, they've clearly been that in past years. And Auburn, I don't want to start making anything above like the low teens. Now with the total on ratings, I'd be making this game close to 7. And with the total, even with home field, I'd probably have this price kind of close to where it is. To me, the edge and why I was going to be if it was painted, be willing to lay 6.5 flat, which I guess you can at STS and Circa and Vertex, which I know is not a great sign to have these people against me. FanDuel. Why I'm not doing anything is the price, but why I wanted if 6.5 was painted to give it out. Arnold, the way, if you haven't been paying attention, you don't have to trust me. You can go watch the games. It's very clearly, you can literally see Hugh Freeze click the button on his hand. He's talking to Jackson Arnold in all these games, basically until the ball is snapped. To me, Arnold has never been close to anything I would ever consider a good processor of football. And what happened against Baylor was Baylor's defense was obviously declaring coverages before the snap on every single one. I don't know why. Aranda's been decent at tweaking stuff, but he's more at like making subtle tweaks to the defensive front. But anyways, all the running that he did against Baylor was all design runs, pre-diagnosed stuff where Hugh Freeze was babying him through it. Everything since, and I think they played Ball State and South Alabama last week, has been the exact same. Football ability-wise, I agree. He's looked very good this year, but I really strongly believe mentally and decision-making-wise, it's all been Hugh Freeze playing Madden through him as his puppet. And that's going to be physically impossible in this game against the hardest, literally the hardest defense in college football to do stuff like that against. Like, they do everything so different. And, like, of course, everyone in the world's going to talk about it, but of course, there's not going to be one coach in America who's going to know more about the specific weaknesses of this kid and how to exploit him than Venables. So I think it's like almost like a 2.5 3-point handicap in favor of Oklahoma, in my opinion. But I need 6.5 painted to give it out, and it's not. So nothing. Very strong lean Tulane. I'm just basically pricing Ole Miss as a decision that this Chambliss, however you pronounce it, quarterback is who they want to start. And that Simmons could play if they needed him to, but I think it's performance related. I have Tulane not quite as like a 10. I mean, that's getting kind of crazy with quarterback play like that to call Tulane a 10. Like they're still Tulane and they lost too much in the portal and they're too inconsistent to have them close to that. But they're clearly above a 5 and like are probably a 7. This is a pretty down Ole Miss team, at least from last year for sure. The worst offensive line they've had in a long time. I'm going to call Ole Miss probably around a 15 to 17, depending on what you think of them and this quarterback. And I'd be pretty close to this being the price on a neutral. However, I just think with the spot and everything, at least cancels out the home, and I don't really see anything strong to do. West Virginia, I don't know what the hell this guy was doing last week. I mean, I want to say they're in control of the game, but like they're leading and like clearly playing well enough as a decent underdog last week to be leading at halftime. Then, and I know it was pre-scripted going into the game. Their plan was to play 3 or 4 or 5 quarterbacks, but I don't know. When things are going well, I don't know why you need to switch things. They switch quarterbacks. Immediately, the guy throws 2 of the worst interceptions I've seen in my life. Busts the total, busts the game. They blow the lead. It looks like Pitt's going to go destroy them. Pitt's just about as poorly coached, and then they switch back to the Marshall, however you pronounce it, quarterback for West Virginia, and they come back and win. I don't know what to do with them. They don't look better than a 0 to me, maybe fractionally, but Kansas is like not a lot better than a 10. So to me, this price is pricing in like a huge letdown off that game for West Virginia, which kind of feels fair, but on team quality, I definitely make this game lower. So I'm going to bow down to football handicapping and leave it alone. ASU, I have had above Baylor every game this year. I'm not currently betting this price. If 3 showed, this is one where I would be arrogant enough to not be scared somebody knows something I don't, and I probably would bet Arizona State if 3 showed up tomorrow, which, just looking at the way things are shaded, it almost feels like it might. I'm not convinced they were like that wrong, if at all, the wrong side against Mississippi State, who's probably pretty underrated. And Baylor, like I just said, I'm not really high on Auburn. Like, to be honest, I have ASU and Auburn rated like right there together, and Auburn was won the game, and they were clearly the right side, even if I know they had a kick return in the game. But like, clearly Auburn -1 was a good bet to me in week 1. Baylor was not close to the right side against SMU and got completely bailed out there. And obviously there's another like $12.7 gazillion bet on Arizona State last week. Now, a big thing with why they were able to run the ball so well last week, Texas State's defensive front, and this is not uncommon in P4 versus G5 stuff, is way more twitchy than big. It's not bad, but it's just a lot more twitchy than big. And the way ASU is like probably number 1 in the country of being the most game plan specific team, like so much of what this coach does depends on the other opponent. Like, they're more multiple than anybody. They do everything based on the game plan with their opponent that week. And so they run the ball extremely differently against a team like Baylor, who has a very classic, like, Dave Aranda, big guys up front. So how's that going to translate? I don't know. We haven't really seen it. I don't even really compare it to Mississippi State. But to me, the quality of football ASU's played basically in every single game these last 2 years has me easily having them decently above a +10, probably not quite a +15, probably something like a 12.5 power rating. And I'm being, frankly, stretching Baylor to make them even like a 10, which I'd be like a lot closer to ASU pretty easily favored on neutral. So I'm guessing at what the home is worth and on enough of the football handicap stuff to not really think about the game unless 3 shows. But even at this current price, my intuition is to favor ASU barely as my best guess. But like I said, my conviction's not enough to love an edge that like might be worth 20 cents, might be worth 0, might be worth -5 because of something I'm missing. But I kind of think you're nuts if you're betting Baylor, to be honest, at this price. So here's a huge one. I haven't seen anybody talk about this. I don't think it's on here. Yeah, it's not. So USC's best or second best player is the receiver Jacoby Lane, who at practice on Wednesday basically did nothing besides show up. And they asked Lincoln Riley yesterday about him and why he did nothing. And he gave a complete like non-answer, like you'll see on the report on game day. He, all of these last 3 years, has really erred with resting guys when there is a bye week and then as 18-point favorites this week and then a bye week and then Illinois. Like, I know all off season they've been really scripting their schedule around getting ready to peak for Illinois. It would not shock me at all if Jacoby Lane did not play. That's not on here. I've seen nobody talk about that. I guess during this call, I guess a couple minutes ago, they updated Nick Marsh to be probable. That's, if you don't know, Michigan State's king shit receiver. To me, what is Lane worth? A lot, I think. Like, I mean, maybe 10 cents. Like, I think it'd be enough to, like, if you thought you had some like 54% winner on USC today, it'd flip it to where you have nothing. And that if you thought the game was perfectly priced, that you probably have something small on Michigan State and under right now. I think it is that much because, you know, it's, if you haven't watched USC games, it's I know they have a lot of guys to get the ball to, but it's these two really king shit. I don't know enough about NFL scouting to make claims about that, but like really king shit receivers in Lane and Lemon. And I think things change a lot without Lane. So yeah, monitor that. I haven't confirmed anything. Oh, that's Baylor. But yeah, he's not on here, and I've seen very few people talk about that. And he's the guy who had the crazy one-handed catch against Georgia Southern. So just monitor that. I leaned USC before that, but there's nothing to think about right now. Pass. strongly Memphis. I think it was just paying him more 7.5. It made sense that got taken. Really good quarterback play. You can speculate if you think Arkansas is going to look at Notre Dame next week. I think Memphis's defense, there's a chance Memphis's defense is underrated. And like, frankly, if you just go through probabilities, like, Memphis is clearly something positive. I don't know if they're a lot above like a +5, but I don't know why you'd start making Arkansas like way above a 12 or anything. Like, that there's probably a better number for a neutral, and it seems a lot more like Memphis's game than Arkansas's with what's coming up next for them and what they just had last week. So it completely made sense why people took 7.5. I'm kind of close to thinking about Memphis myself. It's just the quarterbacks are both weird enough. The Petrino offense is unique enough that I just need to know that there could be ball knowledge matchup stuff I'm missing, not being a professional football coach. So it's completely Nebraska's game, like handicapper wise, but on team quality, to start loving this price, it's kind of priced in. Like, I mean, I don't know why you want to start making Michigan a lot worse than 15, but like for me, that's kind of back to Oklahoma. Why, like, I mean, Oklahoma laying 4, 5, or 6 or in between, traded all week against Michigan, covered with ease, and like easily looked like if that game was played again, it should be like Oklahoma 7 or 8. And like, I mean, Michigan, I think easily lays something over Auburn and probably closer to 3 than 0. And maybe they lay 5 against Auburn. I don't know. So yeah, but anyways, back to rating Michigan. Like Michigan's probably still in the mid-teens. Like I'm gonna call them like a +15, and Nebraska's probably in the low teens, like maybe around an 11, and the gap on teams is probably closer to 4. So you're already kind of pricing in this like monster college football home field, which it probably is, to be 4 points. But then matchups wise on the football, obviously Rule does so much of like the 5 and 6 man fronts on defense, like really, really light fronts, just inviting Michigan to run on them. And now finally they just unleashed Underwood. Who knows? But I'm guessing, given how well it worked, they're finally letting Underwood run like they did against Central Michigan. That's going to really change things and probably really open a run game against a defense that invites it, that is probably still physically outclassed against Michigan. So it's a game where on ratings and home field spot, like that type of motivational handicap, maybe you can make this game pick, but football matchups wise, I think you need to price in a point or two back from Michigan, which leaves it close to where it is. So good luck if you bet it. I haven't. Stupid price to bet. I think. I mean, that's another one. I nailed the UFC Purdue under last week. I know how he runs those, especially against Odom. And I heard, I don't want to blow up a relationship, but like the way Riley talked about Odom is like super impressed by the way Odom does things, and is horrible, frankly, all the way back to where when he was at Oklahoma playing against Iowa State, kind of like a similar front structure with what Odom does. I mean, clearly there's a little negative still, but like not by miles. And I don't know why you want to start making Notre Dame a lot better than like +17, like high teens. There's not a huge reason to have them a lot better than that. Maybe you call them a 19, but with the way this total is and the way Purdue manages these games and holds on to the ball, I kind of do lean Purdue decently right now. But knowing Notre Dame kind of needs style points, if I don't know, maybe there's a dream crusher thing like Clemson back to that game. There's just too much guessing on stuff. Might be a really good halftime game. We'll see, but I'd rather wait and see. Here's what I kind of mean about like not necessarily being wrong about the number on Stanford. Like it's clearly like the handicap. I get it. It was a 10:30 p.m. body clock game and after midnight their time when they started choking in the second half. But like maybe now when you start slashing BC's record now that they have a rating, now that they have that on their record, but like going into last week, I mean, BC is probably pick or maybe laying a tiny bit against Virginia. The reason I'm not betting this is Virginia's defensive front is very, very light. I'm expecting both Cam Robinson and Antonio Clary to be back. I think one of them is on here. Yeah, Clary says probable and Cam Robinson says probable. Yeah, they're both on there.
if you missed Stanford, so the right guard was the best player on the team, definitely the best offensive lineman. And then the guy above him, Nick Fadig, was their second best offensive lineman, and he mattered. Again, to me, that game last week was all BC shitting their pants and freaking out with basically like 20. What was the EV on 1st and 10 from the 17 there? Probably like at least 4.5 points. So it was like a 18.5 point swing in 2 minutes on the fumble and pick six right before halftime, with BC getting the ball, probably having like a 3-score lead in the second half, and the game probably funnels to like, 38-13 BC, but whatever. I'm not sour about it. But Virginia's very, very light in the defensive box, and I do think Stanford can block it enough to where at this price, I'd need something closer to what we laid last week to think a lot about Virginia. But I will say, like, these, now that Big Ten, ACC, and these conferences with these coastal travel spots, we are getting enough to a sample now where like these coast to coast travels in both directions for teenagers does seem like it plays to a different number than the NFL, and that you shouldn't model it anything like that. And maybe these are worth more. So obviously I'm not shocking anybody here. I strongly lean Virginia, but I couldn't give it a lot of consideration unless it was 14. So everything public about sellers is trending super positive, but anyone who's actually posted a legitimate report and is not some like forum blogger on message boards guessing stuff, I've noticed have been very, very, very careful with the language. Like, he is trending towards playing. He is taking a big step today. Barring setbacks, he's on the right path. Like, nothing is he will play. I obviously, with a lot of injuries, people are going to guard and they don't want to be wrong. I'm not overly reading into that, but I'm not at all yet writing in with pen that he's definitely playing. And that's Friday afternoons are kind of my one time to like not work. So I'm going to like, go probably pretend to have lunch with my girlfriend after this, but I'm probably going to do a mediocre job and probably spend some time checking on the seller stuff for the next 24 hours after that. Because it's worth heaps, I think. And it's not even so much, I think Sellers is like this king shit Heisman dark horse people hyped him up to be, because I don't really think that. But they can't even like pretend to function an SEC offense without him. So what do I make it with and without? And if he's, it's a concussion, so I'm just going to assume if he's playing, he's 100%. South Carolina, we just saw like, again, $12.7 gazillion got bet against them all week and was easily the right side to do that. And even if he didn't get hurt, I don't think they were winning that Vanderbilt game. So I love Vanderbilt, but they're still Vanderbilt. And it feels pretty wrong to make them that much more than a +10 right now, and just like roster quality and like team power rating. And so if you look at what Vautech is, which was like clearly playing as like a negative the last few weeks, for them to close around a touchdown against Vautech and the game land and kind of look well priced. I'm not saying South Carolina is a 0 or anything close to it. They're clearly you have to make them something positive. And I get second half of last year and coming in this year, they're power rating the teens. So we're really slashing their rating to make them what I think they are. But like, I think they have to be in the single digits and like probably closer to a 7 than a 10. So let's call them a 7.5. Mizzou, I know they've not played a lot, but they did play Kansas, and I leaned Kansas and could not have been more wrong. They ran out horrible in that game and still covered. This is the best Missouri team I've seen in a very long time. So far, it looks like Penn State picked the wrong quarterback. I think you could easily, and I probably would argue, Missouri has the best running back in the country. And he's just so built for outside zone stretch, whatever you want to call it, the basis of everything Drinkwitz does. I don't think it's wrong to be calling Missouri like a 17 plus. Like a really high, like they're favored against Florida on a neutral right now. So if they're that, this is real SEC road at home field. Like, it's almost close to this price on a neutral for me. And I'd almost be making this more like 10.5 or 11 with sellers, and like 17.5 if he's out. So right now it's guessing too much. The total's low, and there is enough where if my raw, arrogant, non-market regress number was 11-ish, this would not normally be enough of an edge for me to bet. And I'm probably leaving it alone. But if he's out, I'm screaming, running, sprinting. I don't care. I'll lay a shitty like 12.5, 13, whatever. It's probably going to close 14.5 plus if he's out, and probably close too late. Like, it's my favorite game of the year so far if he's out. And like I said, like, I'm careful. I know last year in this game, Connor Cook and Drew Pine, it was debating on what's going to happen with Missouri. And I know Drinkwitz played a lot of games, basically implying Cook was going to be out. Then he played and he was fine, and it was a super competitive game. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like games and pump fakes and misdirections from Beamer this week, just to be aware of. So yeah, keep kicking the tires. If anybody watching this has confirmed it, that's worth, if he's out, lots of money, like millions of dollars. So let me know if you heard. I'll take care of you. But yeah, I'm not writing in with pen that he's for sure playing yet. Like, I know with concussions in 2025, a lot of people are careful. And he was down for a long time last week. So yeah, so far all I've seen is this SEC injury report, which we just saw with Ole Miss last week, say Simmons was probable and him not play. And then, you know, these like shady, he is trending in the right direction type reports, but like there's nothing so far that's like he is starting. So let's see. This one, the secret keeping's been good. I've tried really hard. I haven't confirmed anything yet, but those are my numbers. Is basically Missouri's game of the month if he's out at this price for sure. But even at like 12.5, it's my favorite game of the year so far. Or whatever, if you have to bet a secondary number as it's steaming. I've talked enough about how NIU manages these games. The issue is we bet under 46.5, I think, against Maryland. And now we're against a Briles offense. Like, there's no way that's only worth 2 points. So unless we had like a 7-point edge on that first Maryland bet, this isn't worth betting, and it's efficient and perfect. On numbers, I lean Fresno. I will say, like, this Hawaii home field is hard to price, and they are like crazy cover machines in the stadium. Alejado is highly, highly probable. He's obviously worth heaps. What's Hawaii with him? Probably like around a -15. What's Fresno? Probably like a -8. What's this game on neutral? Probably 7-ish. Is this worth 4 points of home? It has been. It feels wrong, but it has been. I think it's been worth a little more than that. So I don't know. I mean, it's not completely inconceivable. I mean, it's a crazy flight to a crazy body clock to a place where it wouldn't be stunned if focus isn't 100% for the whole time they're there. So at this price, there's nothing to do. Laying 2.5 might have made sense. I don't blame you if you want to just completely murder Liberty's rating. But math-wise, I can't get to really be considering this. I do think I'm going to have JMU still the best team in the Sun Belt right now. If you want to be more aggressive than me, I don't think you're an idiot, but this price, there's nothing to think about. 7 you could have considered. Stupid teams. Stupid teams. I will say FIU does have like pretty legit Florida athletes. I wouldn't be surprised if Delaware has the better quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if over is good, but we're like still really guessing and learning a lot on how Delaware is going to manage these and hold up. It's not just like one game. Can you show up to be the right side against Colorado and then show up to be the right side against UConn? But can, like, 3, 4, 5 games in a row against legit FBS rosters. Like, how do you handle this against real scouting departments? Like, they're not used to playing legitimate football programs this often in a row. So let's learn and see. They were the first year with Kennesaw, I think last year, Sam Houston and whoever joined the same year as Sam Houston 2 years ago. This is going to bother me so much. Who joined with Sam Houston 2 years ago? I'll look it up after this call. Crazy game from Nevada last week. I don't know. I'm scared to just like torch their rating. I I've never liked this quarterback, Purdy's brother. I do like the coach, and I should like the offensive coordinator. I could kind of see this Kotelnicki branch and Leipold branch of offensive coaching a little bit getting like phased out and out-competed as it's proliferated and become more common. If you don't know, like Penn State, Kansas, Nevada, like there's a lot of the same coaching principles on offense of getting, manipulating these safeties and getting wide open tight ends around them. I'm not enough of a football savant to guess that stuff. If you want to start torching Nevada, I don't blame you, but it's one football game and they were in complete control the first half. I'm not doing anything. Boise, same thing. There's a chance Air Force is horrific. Like maybe a very good chance, but you're priced out unless it's 10. I want to keep thinking, this is just a ridiculous football game. Marshall started using this Del Real Wilson. He's running the ball a lot better than the first guy. I don't know. Middle probably is a negative 20. But Marshall probably is like, a negative 15. Like it's probably the right number. It's amazing how good these markets are. Usually these games are all like from here to here. These games are all mispriced, and I have like 5 bets in this section of the board, but it's a good number. La Tech's quarterback might be better than I thought. I don't know. Southern Miss. If you didn't watch Southern Miss App State, that game was insane. App State threw 3 touchdowns 2 in the end zone. 1 was arguably bounced off the ground for like a 90-yard pick 6 when they're going to score. I don't know. Maybe sour grapes. App State looked like the clearly better team to me still. They were 3 on the road, and I don't think it would close less than that if it's played again. Just like a crazy run out. The ball's an oval, and football's a weird sport. But the quarterback is playing at a pretty high level for Southern Miss. This is the first time they're going to travel against an extremely unique defense that really only Coastal and Old Dominion are running in G5. I'm guessing on how that's going to match up. All right, I'm here's a game I see as a bet. I have it tracked. We're going to do 19.5 minus 110. I think 393 Washington is on the order of a 55% winner. I know they play Ohio State next week. I know I just got fucked with BC in this horrible spot, and I know they're going to Pullman. And I know I just talked about how these rivalries don't seem to matter to these kids. If they can't care off a team that beat them last year, and the entire coaching staff has a bunch of people involved in this rivalry, then I'll lose money. But to me, I think it's time to rapidly adjust Wazoo. So if you missed it, Wazoo, the public company line for the first 3 days of the week was they're opening up the quarterback competition. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, they're saying, no, we actually decide on Sunday who it's going to be. I don't know who that is. All the wording makes me think it's not going to be Potter. They have 3 guys. One is named Duggar. The other guy, either his first or last name has a Z in it. Sorry, I got 100, all the backups. I got like 270 quarterbacks. I know I don't have all the names memorized. Whichever one it is horrible. All 3 of them are atrocious. Honestly, I think Potter pretty clearly is better than the others. I hope they're making a change to one of these 2. If it's Duggar, I'm not going to be surprised if Wazoo can't score more than 1 concession at the end. If it's Duggar, this guy literally, I know some people say this, but this guy literally is it's not even a glorified running back. He just is a running back at quarterback. So what's their rating? Look, I get crazy turnovers, crazy run out. But it's not like all their games have been good. They were in a war with San Diego State until San Diego State choked that game away before half. And this Idaho team that they frankly got outplayed by in week 1 is not a very good Idaho team with everything. You're seeing what they lost with this New Mexico program with the quarterback and OC. So, what is Wazoo? It's all new players, all new starters, a coach who won every game at South Dakota State. But with these data points, with me being super flexible on what they could be, there's no reason to think this isn't a middling Mountain West team. And again, I know they ran out horrible last week, but that price made no sense to me, and my eyes always perk up on games like that. Thank God I didn't bet Wazoo. they're doing way too much, I think, Wazoo. And could they simplify things for this game? Maybe. But Wazoo on defense is doing like, they're trying to run like Manny Diaz, Alex Grinch, like crazy complicated stuff every single time with players who have never played it all together. I know they brought plenty from South Dakota State, but they're like massively unorganized on everything. I get it. We probably just saw Wazoo play the worst game they're going to play all year last week. I'm not, obviously, if I'm wrong about that, we're stealing here. Obviously, I'm not pricing that as their new median for what they are. It's one football game. It was a weird game to go travel in 100-degree weather and show up in. And again, it didn't matter a lot, and they had this on deck. I get it. I'm expecting a way better performance. But still, this roster, I don't think I'm making more than a -10 right now. And like, if they play Colorado State on a neutral, I'm easily favoring Colorado State. And like, honest to God, like they're favored something over Hawaii right now, but I don't think they're like way apart from Hawaii. Washington, this guy might be the most underrated quarterback in the country. I mean, I don't know if people have been watching. Like, for example, this UC Davis team they just played and won 70-10 would be – I'm not enough of an FCS expert on team strengths and matchups to tell you what it'd be, but like right now versus Wazoo on a neutral versus UC Davis would be not more than 7-point favorite. Probably more than a 3-point favorite, but like, a 4 to 6.5 point favorite probably Wazoo would be over UC Davis, and they won 70-10. This is a really legit Big Ten roster. I know it's their Super Bowl next week against Ohio State, but I'm really not expecting them to overlook this one. There's one injury that bothers me. I'm not expecting Takario Davis, this corner, to play. He's this like NFL 6'4" guy. They have another NFL 6'4" guy, and another guy who's playing a lot of football. Mediocrely, I'll say. They do have one weak link cornerback. I think his name is Leroy Davis. No, maybe not Davis. His first name is Leroy. But they're running the ball better than – I know they've played nothing, but they're running the ball better than any team in the country so far. I thought Colorado State, like, as a football team, was kind of impressive against them. I don't count that as a bad game for them whatsoever. This running back is, like, amazing, and this quarterback is, like, I think phenomenal. So they're doing a lot of the same Ryan Walters stuff, like really 5-man fronts, like really sturdy Big Ten stuff with these huge NFL corners. And they're not really disguising stuff. They're just saying, we're better than you. They're clearly better than Washington State. And they lost this game last year. I think they're going to care. Obviously, the travel's nothing. If they care, we're stealing. I think Washington. I think on Wazoo's best day, they're -10. I really think they're like a -13. I think they're like 2 over Hawaii with this quarterback situation. Who either quarterback it is going to be like so far tenfold beyond anything they've ever seen in their life against a Ryan Walters Washington defense. And I think Washington. I think Washington's like above Illinois. Like, they're there with whatever the market is thinking Indiana is right now. Like probably above that, like closer to a 15 than anything else. So I mean, on ratings on a neutral field, I mean, I'd be closer to what this number just moved to. Probably more than it. I'd probably be closer to 22.5 on a neutral. Probably more than that, and not really thinking there's much home to worry about with a bye week and them caring about winning this game last year. So I don't know if it's 2025 and people just don't care about rivals anymore and they just want to like mow through the game and win by 10 and then go play Ohio State. I'll lose money, but it's cheap if they care at all. This game last year was Vandy 8.5, and they lost. and the rosters really aren't a lot different. Now it's a football game, and obviously Vandy rapidly improved after that. But these are not really the games to bet Vandy in. They're really good at frustrating teams they're better than, turning it into a low possession game and making the high leverage downs count with an unbelievable like 10 out of 10 coach. So like I said, I think Vandy's only like probably around a +10 still, and that's me loving them. But around a +10, and Georgia State, if you dislike them, is probably only like a -15. I hate TJ Finley more than anybody in the world, but like the guy has played a lot of SEC football. So yeah, I mean, I kind of think 27 or 27 and a half is a better number, but these are not really the games I bet. And, if Vandy is not quite good enough to name the score if they wanted to, but it's close. And just in case they randomly want to, I don't like getting in front of that. I guess you can talk about UTEP in tandem with Texas. Obviously, I have no idea why he's at UTEP, but this UTEP corner really is good. I'm not convinced UTEP is that bad. What do you make Texas now? I don't know. I mean, they got to be in like the teens. I don't want to make them that better than a plus 20. Most of the market's probably going to have this slightly better than that still. Sam Houston could be like Kent State this year, though. I mean, and if they were going to get right, this would be like a game to do it in. And nothing has been one penny wrong with Texas' defense all year. So, I mean, Sammy, and I saw this does matter. He's probable. When Sam Houston switched quarterbacks in the UNLV game, that was not for performance or to try new stuff. When this guy was horrible, Matauer, I guess you say it. It was because Watson got hurt, and then obviously he didn't play in the Hawaii game. My intuition is if Texas cares at all about getting right on numbers, it's insane to say, but it's actually getting fractionally cheap. But I'm not betting this at all with what they have coming up. Same thing here. I totally understand why UTEP got bet, but we're far past anything interesting. I see one more bet here. You can probably guess on California, -13, -110. I'll track it as. So kind of in tandem with now what we see from Wazoo, but San Diego State really not competing in any game against any real team at any point last year, or this year, is not really wanting me to think they're anything close, frankly, to being better than like Hawaii or something like that. Like I'd have them. I mean, I just told you I think Wazoo is, and Wazoo controlled the whole game. The whole second half. I'm going to call San Diego State like a -15 and don't really see much evidence to think that's not what they are. California, I mean, easily, I think, as a +5. They were not near the right side that the score suggested last year. There was a botched punt on their own 5-yard line where Minnesota handed them a touchdown. But in seeing this guy travel, and as good as he is, and they are back to having like 5 NFL defensive backs again and playing like legit Wilcox defense, I'm a little worried. Sagapolatele, I got to work on this. I don't want to be disrespectful. It's on here. The spelling helps when I see it spelled out. I think it's Sagapolatele. I don't know how to pronounce the middle name. JKS clearly has been phenomenal. Minnesota is rated pretty highly, and I know Minnesota just got bet hard last week, but was not close to the right side, I don't think. This is as legitimate as a Cal defense can be. I mean, I know what Cal looks like when they're a +5, and that's kind of what they are right now. This can sound nuts. They have no obvious like game-changing, get the ball to him type offensive player, but they're almost like the Bills right now in the NFL, where like they can flick these shovel passes to like Jackson Hawes and whoever this was. He number 14 on the Bills last night. I don't even know who he was. Then they got Elijah Moore running around, like all these like just cycling through JP, Josh Palmer, and all these guys. And obviously no like real king shit ACC weapon, but they throw the ball to like 10 different people. Harsin, whatever you think of him, has this guy playing really, really good football. And they're traveling, as we just saw, to Oregon State, which I did not think was going to be an easy game to play, playing well enough. So this game last year was 18.5. Cal covered. Both are improved, but I think Cal is a more improved team than San Diego State is this year. And so, like, despite the total, and I know Wilcox is not at all one of these, like, let's go win by 1 million points, like, keep scoring in the fourth quarter types guy. But, like, he did score in that fourth quarter. He scored in the fourth quarter late against Texas Southern. Like, they come focused. This guy's just got paid a shitload of money. Like, it's not like it's random. They have this freshman playing well. Like, he was worth, like, millions of dollars on the open market. It makes sense to me to call them a 5. I mean, I'm pretty close to this game being like neutral field fastballs from both teams being like closer to 20. That, to be clear, that's not my number here. It shrinks way down with the way Cal plays these football games and what this total is. But They do a ton of motion like the Bills, honestly, pre-snap. It's not a hard crowd to play in there at all. The travel's really light for them too. It's like a 50, 60-minute flight. Even shrinking down with the total and the way Cal plays these, I'm not making 17, but I'm making it closer to 16 even probably than this current number. Would I lay this current number? I don't think so. 14 minus 110, probably for something tiny. 14 juice, probably not. 14 and a half and 14 juice, probably leave alone. What's it going to close? I don't know. I mean, Cal got bet against a lot last week, but they got hammered against Oregon State. It's hard for me to guess that still right now. I'll know more after we get like 5 games in with these teams. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just close 14 and a half here, where it looks like 13 minus 110 was a pretty good bet. So we'll see. What's this one going to close? I don't know. I mean, the market, they bet North Texas on game day last week on a price that didn't make a lot of sense to me. So like, I might not be the only one on the Wazoo right now, but this is like putrid quarterback play from both, honestly. And that's another thing with San Diego State. Like Denegal, I don't hold a lot against him. And like, maybe it was just obvious he needed to transfer and get out of there and he wanted to save eligibility. But if there was any chance of him playing last year and he didn't earn it, I mean, that tells you all you need to know with what Michigan was doing at quarterback last year. So, yeah. And then, the other thing, I know Cal, again, this Wilcox isn't going to like be trying to murder people by a million. With the way Sean Lewis does this Briles stuff, you're getting enough possessions in these games to like really get into the mid 30s with a quarterback this good. So yeah, those are the two I see in college. Washington minus 19.5, minus 110, Cal minus 13, minus 110. And then 2 in the NFL, Chargers minus 2.5, minus 120, 49ers minus 2.5, minus 120. Again, don't go bet this like I'm telling you I'm certain Purdue is playing. I'm not. I don't think they're certain what they're doing yet. And this might, forget when they practice now on Fridays. This might be coming out sometime during this call with like some more promising news there. But again, I walked you through the math. I think we're like borderline free rolled. Not borderline. I think we are. Again, clearly I'm off market on both teams. But those are my thoughts, and these markets are not always perfect, at least not on Friday. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Let's hope these don't suck again. How do I? All right. Thanks for sharing stuff. Oh wow, sorry, 207. Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta do better with these questions. I'll try and get through these better next time. Thank you all for listening this far, and have a great day.